If you've ever wanted to take a road trip in your vintage Porsche, stay tuned. Guys, welcome back to another episode of Rennch. As mentioned, if you want to take a road trip in your vintage Porsche, this is going to be the video series for you. I have the 2021 Targa California coming up in 4 days. And I have a few things I want to do to my car. Behind me is the Gray Ghost. We're going to take a little bit of a break from the Blasphemy build to go back to the old faithful, the car that's done. And I need to do a couple of things on this car to get it ready for a long road trip. Now, some of the things you should do every time you're about to do a road trip. In this case, we are going through Death Valley, which as of now, if I looked, I think it's probably 110 degrees there. So one of the first sets of videos on this channel was a 5-part install series of the classic retrofit electric air conditioner system, which is built for vintage Porsches from 1964 until 1989. They're doing stuff for Singer, they're doing stuff for Gunther Works. They are the air conditioning system for these vintage cars. And I installed one of the original kind of early prototypes. And gosh, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago at this point. So what I want to do is, some of their technology has advanced since I originally hooked up the AC. And they've sent me some of their cool new bits to install on the car so that I can make it even better than it already was. And I gotta tell you, if you've never experienced air conditioning in a vintage Porsche, it's so cool to be able to have a passenger and be able to have an actual conversation with them instead of having the windows down at 70 miles an hour. And you show up where you are and you're not all sweaty, your back's not all sweaty, and you're not exhausted. So it really helps the course of the day. It just helps you enjoy the experience a lot more. So on the docket is a couple of things. Number one, since it's an electric air conditioning system, they have sent me one of their Bomber 175 amp alternators, because more juice equals more air when it comes to electric air conditioners. Then I have a second condenser, and I'm gonna install this one just like I did in episode 50. In fact, I'm hoping that's gonna be the first thing I do in this video. If you go back to episode 50 and see, I already have one condenser in front of the left rear wheel. I'm gonna put one behind the left rear wheel and run them in series. That's the hope. Then, you guys haven't seen this yet, but these are brand new classic retrofit vents. And these bad boys go underneath kind of where your stock air vents come out in your footwell. And they bolt into the factory locations, and then you can also turn them. It's really, really cool. Finally, I have a new dash vent that will allow me to point left, right, 360 degrees that I got from some hot rod shop. So that's the initial air conditioning upgrade. Part B, if I can pull it off, is I would love to install one of Classic Retrofit's new modern fuse panels. I don't know if I'm gonna have time to do that. As we speak, it is Monday afternoon, and I've got to leave Wednesday afternoon. So I have 2 days to do all of this other stuff and make sure that everything is dialed with the car. So plan for the day is get the condenser in first, then do the alternator and get everything all plumbed up and wired up. Then I'm going to work on vents and make sure that's good before I charge the system. Then I'm going to do an oil change for the car. I've got a brand new set of filters right from Porsche. I didn't bother going to like Fram or something like that. I thought, let me get the real Porsche filters. And then I've got 12 quarts of Mobil 1 040 going in the car. Always a great idea to do an oil change before you do any major road trip. Otherwise, I'm going to be checking, nuts and bolts and tire pressures and everything you need to make sure that you're safe. I've got my wheels and tires off the car. I'm going to check my brake pad width and things like that. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. One of the great things about the Classic Retrofit kit is that they not only come with condensers, but they come with a perfect built-in fan. And you can't see this, I can show you guys in a second, but I've got this one mounted here with a little bit of airflow on the underside. I'm going to try to do the same thing on this wheel well as I did on the Blasphemy build, which is kind of look where the cables are oriented and figure out how I'm going to mount this up here in this cavity. Okay, I've got a plan. So I've marked off 3 spots of undercoating under here that I'm going to grind off. I'm going to weld some studs onto each one of those spots, and I'm going to mount the condenser sort of at an angle right here. Then I'm going to tap into this power that's hanging out right here, unplug this thing and splice it into the power over there. I'm going to unplug wherever I can't remember where the output is. I've got to figure out which one the output is on this side. So I'll go into this condenser, run a hose to the second one, and then run another one all the way back. All right, here's where we're at. I have these bolts and nuts affixed to the underside. I'm going to press them up against the chassis, try to tack them in, and then I'll unbolt it and try to fully weld these things up. That will give me like a nice 1.5 inches of space on the inside of this thing so that the air can get through. All right, I've got all of these 3 in. They are ready to go. I'm going to clean them up, hit them with a bit of undercoating, and coat them with a bit of spray paint. All right, we are cleaned up and ready for mounting. I'm going to let this paint dry a little bit and start working on the electrical and the hose connections. All right, what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to snip this wire, and I'm going to make a little pigtail that goes from there to there, there to there, so I can hook up both fans to the same circuit. So I'm just making a wire here that will be comfortable in the very harsh environment that is under the car. So I'm going to make sure that I've got this thing wrapped. I've got some really good electrical tape, and I've got heat shrink. So I'm going to make this nice little cord that connects both fans together. Now when you cut this stuff, you want to make sure you hit it with a lighter, and it'll stop the edges from fraying. So when you do a wiring like this, you've got to make sure you kind of plan ahead. You've got to make sure the heat shrink is on it. You've got to make sure your wrapping is on it, because once you put the connection ends on, a lot of times you can't get this stuff over it. So that's not fun. The other thing you can do as a little tip is, if you have a hard time feeding it through, just put a little dab of electrical tape on the end, and that will stop it from binding on the inside. This, by the way, is the real deal electrical tape. This is the real automotive stuff, so you can't really cut it. I'm gonna have to grab a pair of scissors. You can make yourself a little bullet end like that, and that will allow this to feed easier. So I made a mistake here that's worthy of note. Instead of having both splices, I kind of spliced 2 pieces together using these blue connectors. I did them right next to each other. I should have staggered them so the cable itself is narrower, but I didn't. So I will untape these. This stuff is great. By the way, this is the real deal. This is the pro stuff. I got it from Amazon. Okay, I've got my pigtail already. This will connect to the existing wires, and I've got a little red heat shrink on there to make sure that I don't mix up the positive from negative. This will connect to fan number 1 that was already there, and then this one, which was the previous plug, will connect to fan number 2. All right, so here's my nice new wiring loom. It's super pro looking. It's got this nice little pigtail on it. These will connect directly to here. Then this guy will connect directly to here. And then I will zip tie them up along this edge here, and we will be sorted. Overall, that went really well. The wiring loom looks awesome. The condenser looks great. I may have to tweak the location of the condenser a little bit. I didn't account for the fittings, the hose fittings to go on the end of the condenser, so it's kind of butting up against the side of the car. Nothing I can't figure out. And I'm waiting for some information from Johnny over at Classic Retrofit in terms of how to correctly plumb the condensers. So I don't have time to wait. Even though it's the middle of the night right now in England, I have to keep moving. So I'm gonna at least start the process of swapping out this alternator. This is really a lovely piece of kit. It's made by a company called WOSP. This is a 175 amp alternator. The kit they give you comes with a new cable to ground to the chassis and to go right to your starter. So this thing should give you all the juice you need for a juicy Classic Retrofit air conditioning unit. So I'm going to dig into the car now and see how far I can get tonight before I've got to hit stop and go make this video. Take this all the way off. This belt. There we go. It's totally off. And now we have fan. First time I've ever used this car protector thingy that I bought a million years ago. Goes without saying, you've got to disconnect your battery before you do any of this stuff. Right? Now let's not be silly. I think one of the main differences between doing it on this, the 993 engine, is it's way more robust than the 911 engine. You know, you get into that fiberglass fan shroud that always breaks. It's really a pain. So what I'm going to do here is take this cover off. I'm going to disconnect the leads after I take a picture. And then I'm going to have to sort out separating the alternator shaft from the fan, which could be the wild card. That could be the thing that's the pain in the ass here. There you go. Oh. Success. That was a little bit of a bugger. I tried to take this thing off while I was in there, and that did not go well at all. I always like to clean as I go, because then you have like really nice new parts to play with when you're all done, which is awesome. All right, dudes, I got this thing really close. Got the new pulley on, cleaned up the fan. Looks great. Got it kind of loosely wired. They recommend you run fresh wires to the engine and to the starter because they want everything to be as bomber as it possibly can. I also happen to find this cool Rothsport Racing billet pulley half. So that'll go there and look awesome. So I'm going to leave this thing here now. I got two kind of incomplete projects, but I actually need to talk to Johnny from Classic Retrofit for both of them. I also want to get this video edited and out to you as quickly as I can. I have so much actual work to do that I don't have a huge amount of time to edit and punch this thing out. One thing I want to say is thank you. I've just celebrated my 15,000th subscriber, so that is rad. If you guys are a subscriber to the channel, you guys are awesome, and thank you for that. Thank you for taking the time to watch the Blasphemy build and this cool little project. you know, high five. As always, high five in the comments if you could. I'm going to be back tomorrow. So we're going to hopefully finish this alternator up tomorrow, get the AC totally done, and if you know, God willing, get the thing charged back up, and then, you know, get the other stuff I can get done before this road trip. So stay tuned. We'll see you tomorrow.